Hey there, Karen here with Whiskey Sour, and I woke up to a nice surprise this morning. Thought it was 7 o'clock, went out to my computer, 6 o'clock. That was really cool. That reminds me of when I was in high school. Every fall, the clock would go back, and it just made it that much easier to get up for school. So awesome. And then later on for work, same thing. It's just, I'd be hairdressing or working at the women's health facility or wherever I was working at the time. Just that extra hour is just like a gift. So it was really cool this morning because you just feel like you get a jump on the day. It just feels really good. So nice invention. I like it a lot. Yes, we're messing with time, but you know what? Having a clock and a calendar to begin with is messing with time, right? So I was surfing online, and you know how the ads will come up on the right hand side of your page, and I saw an ad today that said, feeling depressed and nothing has worked? Take part in this clinical study. Possible compensation. You have to understand, I've been through a massive depression and feel good to be out of it. I do not feel depressed anymore. It was a lot of years to get to that point. A lot of songs written to get to that point, a lot of therapy to get to that point, but I laughed at it because it's kind of a ridiculous phrase if you look at it. So having had a lot of experience with depression, I can tell you that the phrasing on that is both depressing and disheartening, because while I'm glad they don't promise compensation, when they say possible compensation, because when you're depressed, the last thing you need is like another empty promise, just yet again, another empty promise. But I'm ever so slightly annoyed that they loosely promise it anyway. For any of us who know anything about depression, we don't bother setting ourselves up for any chance of disappointment. And we don't look for the word possible, and we don't look at that word possible as a positive possibility. We actually see it as a glaring negative, reinforcing that whole why bother platform that I was talking to you guys about before. For the depressed person, life is one gigantic disappointment, stepping on the face of all those mini disappointments. So it's easier to stay in a state of sadness rather than attempt anything or risk a setup with the inevitable fall that follows. Sadness is sad. Sadness is gloomy. Sadness is depressing, and it's ugly. But one thing it doesn't seem to be is very hard. It's not, at least for me, I should always make sure I speak on my behalf, but for me, sadness I wouldn't consider that a really hard thing to be. It just sort of takes over, and it is what it is, and it keeps you in that kind of state. And I wouldn't say it's hard. It's hard on you, and you find life around you difficult. But the state of being sad, I didn't really find that particularly hard. Remember when they would try to tell you, back in school, they'd say, oh, it takes, I can't remember what the numbers were, it takes so many muscles to frown, and it takes less muscles to smile. So it's like, that's just one gigantic crock. Now, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but it was enough to make an impact on me, and it still sticks with me today, so I do think about it. So it's a good thing, but the reason is it's not applicable to a depressed person. It doesn't even apply, because contrary to popular belief, we aren't really, as depressed individuals, sitting around frowning. We're not like trying to put on the real frowny face. We're actually doing nothing for the most part. So you're not really sitting around. When you're sitting in that kind of state of perpetual sadness, you're not really doing much of anything at all. You may be way past the point of crying. I know for me, most of my depression, there was a good portion of it where I was crying in tears and very sad. And I would always describe my depression as overwhelming sadness. But I did get past the point of crying, and I kind of went straight into that state of being numb. And being numb requires almost no emotion. That's kind of what it means. So it's pretty easy, really. But what we don't understand, that depression is a war that's waging on our insides, and it's ripping apart our insides. We have stomach acid from all our anxiety that's going on, that's eating away at more organs than we can count. And inactivity affects many parts of our body. The bigger problem is we have to actually care in order to get it turned around. And when that why bother phrase is sitting front and center of it, that phrase that they're trying to sell you, possible compensation, is not going to trigger a whole lot of reaction. And so I have very little confidence that this little clinical trial that they want to do is going to do much of anything to help. If they actually knew enough about depression to hold this study that they're doing, they would know that that phrasing isn't going to do much at all. Most people are going to look at that possible compensation as a big, fat, giant disappointment. Getting out of depression requires a series of steps, which are often different for each individual, and I think one of the common threads between depressed people, if you talk to most people, is kind of that fear might be a strong word, but the fear of disappointment. Just the thought even of just being disappointed is enough to go, ugh, why bother? You know, just I'm not going to set myself up for that. And why bother means just that. If we think nothing good can come of something, we don't try anything. And in some cases, we just don't have that serotonin that I've talked about in previous blogs to actually get up and in front of that decision we have to make. You know, it's just physically, chemically not possible. So my initial question on today's blog is sadness better than disappointment? It's a question I ask because I had a fairly solid answer during my depression. It wasn't yes, and it wasn't no. The answer was, who cares? So basically I just took a question and answered it with a question. I'd sometimes mix it up by somebody asking me, and I'd say, oh, I'm sorry, were you talking to me? You know, just totally didn't care. Just did not care. And it reminds me of that line in that Robert Downey Jr. film, Tropic Thunder, where he's like, were you talking this whole time? You know, you just kind of, in your state of numb and not caring, you just don't care. You simply don't care. So it's almost impossible to answer any question somebody asks you if you do not care. And this happens a lot. Think about how many times in marriage with your spouse or your partner, they'll try to get that answer out of you for something they passionately care about. And they want a yes or they want a no. Very definitively want one of those answers. So then you throw them the one which will satisfy them the most. It's like if they're looking for the yes, you just throw them the yes. And if they're looking for the no, you're like, no, I don't want that for dinner. And then they're all happy. But the reason we throw them that answer back is just to satisfy them long enough so that we can get back to not caring again, because we're busy not caring. And you want to get back to not caring as quickly as possible because it's just easier on you. It just trying to find the extra emotion or the extra energy to care about something. It takes too much out of you. So get back to not caring as quickly as you can. For me, sadness was actually the step right before caring, because you're actually showing some emotion when you can say I feel sad, then you're feeling something, and that's kind of a good thing. So that was I had that. So you kind of go from sad to not caring. So in order to get back to being happy again, you kind of have to pass back through sadness again, and some of those emotions that you have to confront. So I needed help initially, like I said before in my blog, from my doctor to just start caring again, to get my, I had gone on an antidepressant, not even for a long time, just enough to get my serotonin levels back up so I could care again. And once I started that, then I had years where I had to pull myself back up again. You know, it wasn't just take a drug. And I wanted to make sure I clarified that with you guys too, that when I took an antidepressant, it wasn't for a long time, enough just to kind of get my serotonin levels back up. Then there was a whole series of things I had to go through, so to get back to caring again. And once I could care again, then I could answer this question, is sadness better than disappointment? Then I could start to think about a good answer to that question instead of who cares. Sadness was way better than disappointment. And I think a lot of people would agree with that statement. Disappointment didn't make me sad, it just made me sick. And so what you start doing is comparing sadness to actually being physically sick to your stomach, which my anxiety would get so bad that I would literally throw up. So I avoidance, just staying in a state of being sad, all those things to me was way easier than disappointment, which would make me ill, because it would just evoke all these old emotions from past relationships or past problems or past issues, and then make me physically sick. So yeah, disappointment didn't make me sad, it made me sick. I had such a record-breaking number of frustrations that I'd choose to try nothing, and I wouldn't try anything at all. And the way our bodies are made up, we have to actually do stuff to function, and we have to try new things so that we can learn. And we need to risk some areas to succeed in some other areas. The word risk is enormously scary to a sad person. It's better, as an example, if you were going to pay $800 a month on an apartment and somebody said, well, you know, you could be applying that to a mortgage. You could have an $800 a month mortgage payment. You'd be freaked out, because that would be a risk. And it's not that the actual payment's any higher or whatever, but you just equate that with risk. And that's kind of what risk is like to a very sad person. It's similar with depression, when it's not as bad as what we think, when something's just not that as bad, but it's just still kind of scary. The difference is that we don't want the responsibility, because that means you have to care, and you have to expel some risk, and you have to set yourself up possibly for disappointment. Life happens in stages and steps. That is all we have to do at any one time. Once I figured out that my body wasn't caring because it had some of those chemical issues that I was saying, once I could get through the hurdle of those chemical issues that were inhibiting me from caring, I could start my journey back to trying out the possibilities again in life. Of course, life can be unnerving, sucky, unpredictable, unfair, but nobody promised it would be anything else. That is life. That's what goes on. And if you're too afraid of taking a risk, maybe just try a teaspoon of risk as opposed to a whole cup of risk. Like if it's just way too much to swallow, just take a little less of it. And we don't have to turn it all around today. We can give ourselves the permission to take it in baby steps. If you haven't seen the movie What About Bob, just any of us who have been through extensive therapy or had any problems with anxiety, depression, that overwhelming sadness, the movie What About Bob, it's really funny, and yet it's so valid. Kind of a scary way. It's valid in many ways, but again, I love anything that can add some humor, just lighten things up a little bit. So I signed off today, Baby Steps to the Door, which you probably won't get if you haven't seen the movie. The whole movie is about a book called Baby Steps, and Bill Murray's journey with this book. So there's a part in the elevator where he says, baby step to the elevator, baby step into the elevator, okay, I'm in the elevator. And then he just, you could see the anxiety that was going on, but he got into the elevator. That's kind of how he went throughout the movie, so yeah, I would recommend that one. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of the day, seeing as this daylight savings time has given me a good kickstart on the day. And it's sunny out and not really, really hot like it has been. So I may venture out and about. I do have a lot of work to do, but, sometimes you just gotta avoid work and just go out and grab a little bit of life sometimes too. So I may do that today. I hope that you guys have an excellent Sunday, and I hope your weekend rocks. And don't let Monday get you down too much. It's really just a man-made day that we made up. I know that, it does represent the beginning of our work week, but there's always something that we can do to just make things go a little better if we just, kind of apply the right attitude to it. So enjoy your day, and I hope that the rest of your weekend rocks, okay? From Whiskey Sour and me. Until next time, rock on, guys.